Sahana bhavatu, Sahano bhunaktu, Saha viryam karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditam astu ma vishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May we not, may our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So there's a common question that arises. Understanding the theory of something, in fact, any subject, how do we put this into practice? Supposing we are told there are some principles, let's say in chemistry or physics, or supposing you take an art class and you learn the principles of how to do this, then of course that's the one side of it. But unless you put it into practice, then it's hollow. And we can say that you need the principles and you need the practice. The principles act as a foundation because all knowledge comes in a kind of scientific way. What do I mean by that? It means that we start off with the principle of something and we get that from a source. In the case of spirituality, let's call it religion, it is scriptural. Scripture is a record of somebody who says, I have seen, I have experienced, and actually, here's a formula. There's a provision of a kind of manual, A, B, C, D. This practice you need to follow. And then you can, in brackets, you can prove me right or wrong, but it has to be rational. So whatever our principles are, has to be rational. If it's irrational, then we are stuck with blind faith that comes kind of from our childhood, where we're told a story, but we tend to outgrow it, and we're reluctant to outgrow it because it's culturally ingrained in us. We were talking earlier on about, let us say, a child up to the age of 4 or 5, whatever the culture they've been brought up in, it comes in transactional analysis, psychological term, as part of a parent script. That is, when we are 1 foot, everybody else is 6 foot. We have no way of judging whether something is right or wrong. We simply accept it. Conversely, if we are a parent, the best way to teach a child is be the example. The child will copy what you're doing. The example, if your mother is sweeping the floor, the small child will want to say, where's my little broom? Want to do it the same thing. If you give a mixed message when you're one who is playing this parental role, whatever it is, then it becomes confusing. Insecurity comes in. We need some solid basis. Same thing with everything. We need principles. And the principles have to be reliable. The principles of Vedanta are reliable from the point of view that we have them from a credible, reliable source. We have the opportunity of testing them out, and they are rational. And we have examples of many people who did it. Saints, sages, mystics, from every kind of background and every religion. These we call mystics or saints, those people who took the principles, but then made a connection. Now, the word connection is important. Prior to this word being applied to connectivity with the internet, for example, it is their connection with electricity. A child doesn't know, for example, how that all works necessarily. They just know it works. And today, if you want to learn anything about your computer or technology, you ask a 4 or 5-year-old child, they'll sort it out for you. And this technology is running at such a rapid rate, it leaves us behind if we're not astute enough to keep up with it. All we know is when we switch something on, then we get a connectivity, whether it's a radio, whether it's a television set, whether it's a computer now. There's this connectivity, and There's a Bluetooth thing, that arrangement whereby it works on radio waves. We can pick up the radio waves, given that we have a suitable transistor, something that picks the wave up and tunes into it. Now we can use this as an example because there's a whole electromagnetic wave system that contains many, many different types of waves. So the principle of it is, this universe is made from oscillating waves, oscillating, varying waves. Now this was so, according to the ancient Vedantins and yogis, they understood. What's the difference? See, Vedanta teaches us the principle and gives us a clue to the practice, but yoga is the actual practice. And wherever I go, I was having a talk on Thursday, my first question is to those people practicing yoga. And I said to this group, I said, so what has health and wellness got to do with yoga? Or yoga got to do with health and wellness? And some say, well, everything, more or less that was the answer. But I have come with a pre-prepared answer, which says hardly anything, because we misunderstand these terms. So yoga implies that there is this tuning. It implies that there is this union or connectivity. How do we connect and feel the connectedness with what we call the divine? And so we have to rely on scripture that not only tells us the principles of it, but more importantly, tells us the practice. And the practice is emotional. The feelings, the emotions have to catch up with it. We have to feel. It's all very well saying that there's an omniscient, omnipresent entity, but connectivity is required, which says I have to feel it. I have to experience it. And that experience, sensation, has to be carefully cultivated, not from the outside, but from the inside first. The inside of what? Well, when you walk around with your eyes open, the inside in everything. And when you're sitting by yourself, the inside in you. You have to discover that principle in everything. And you have to see that everything is within it. It is within everything. And when sitting, it's within me. If we reverse it and say it's in me and never mind about the others, it leads to the most severe form of egoism. Firstly, it says, I know what you don't know. Many, many organizations are like that. And you walk around with an air, kind of nose in the air, looking down on other people who don't know that much. And the Kena Upanishad is very clever. It tells us the one who knows doesn't know. And the one who says, I don't know, that one knows probably. It's not a wise thing to say, I know, because in brackets it means everybody else is a fool. It's a most pronounced form of egotism. Now, the ego is a major obstacle, or egoism is a major obstacle. But like all obstacles, they can be transformed and made useful. In the Yoga Sutras, we have this important principle. It says good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformations. And the example is given, if there's a body of water, we know there's a body of water with a potentiality, and we stop it. We stop it by putting a dam wall there. But then when it's required, we can open the gates and it can create a flow. I don't think that's what was envisaged when that sutra went out. It was more akin to a farmer's field. The water is useful for the crops. And you have a reservoir and you know what gates to open, what gates to close. The problem is that in our so-called normal life, we take the obstacles and the blockages and we say, this is all there is, and we'll deal with it. Instead of understanding there's a huge potentiality that sits behind it, that in our philosophy we call Brahman. See, the very word gives us the clue. Brah, the thing that is expressed and expands a thing that is complete, a thing that is total, a thing that is full. Purnamadam Purnamidam Purnat Purnamaduchyate Punasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. This is full and that is full. This is perfect, that is perfect. You can't get less of it, you can't get more of it, because it's always full. So how is it we don't feel the fullness? Well, we have to undergo some practice. Now, if you want to know what kind of practice, that's something different. So we have to resort to some scripture or reference to find it out. The Bhagavad Gita has a very, very useful chapter on it. It's the 12th chapter. All the chapters are useful. But here's an interesting way of looking at things, you see. We have to take steps which are individually unique to ourselves. And there's scope in the spiritual practice to suit everybody and every flavor. The step taken depends upon your capacity as a student to take it with enthusiasm, but the enthusiasm has to be there. If we leave it just in the head, the enthusiasm will not be there because the feeling is not there, and feeling has to catch up with it. Now I have the usual example about it. The usual example, which people know by heart probably now, is if I take a plank, let us say 20 meters long, 2 meters wide, and I ask you to put it on the lawn, please walk across this, you'll have no difficulty. Then I say, please run across it, no difficulty. Please take a bicycle and cycle on it, no difficulty. Nobody's going to wobble. It's broad enough, it's solid enough, it's supported by Mother Earth itself. Now you take that 20-meter plank as a principle, where you know you can easily walk across it without unbalance. There's plenty of room. You can do it easily. It's not as if you're on a tightrope walking like that, not narrow like that, but we take that same 20-meter plank and we put it over a chasm, 200-meter drop. And now I say there's a big bag of money on the other side. You'll be infinitely wealthy. You'll make sure something like the lotto, you'll get that there. All you have to do is you have to walk along the plank, and we'll condition you. So 2 weeks in advance of the challenge, we'll put you in front of a film daily where people attempt this thing and wobble and fall to their death. All actors like that we'll employ. Bring a film crew and get them to film that, and you're showing that. 2 weeks, every day, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. When you come to the event, more than likely you'll hesitate. Why? Because the fear is there, yet this is the same plank you walked on, you ran on, you skipped on, you cycled on, and it's held with firm bolts on each side, no chance of falling. So, given the option between the head and the heart, or between the principle and the practice, or between the intellect and the feeling, feeling will always win. So what we call practice is rallying the feeling around, and we have to start with enthusiasm. And enthusiasm has to be generated progressively for most people. So we start off by thinking that there is an author of life, something that has the capacity to create and dissolve and sustain, something that is outside our circle of experience. And so, unfortunately, some being that we call on when we're in trouble. And so we put this outside ourselves, just like we put everything else outside ourselves. And the whole of humanity we put outside ourselves, and trees and plants we put outside ourselves, so that when we say, I love nature, we forget that you yourself are part of it. And so when you control nature through yogic practice, externally, internally, you're controlling the whole thing. In yoga, we have this pranayama, control of prana, control of energy. Well, if you control it here in you, you've controlled the whole universe of energy. That's possible. That's really what is meant by the pranayama. And modern science tells us there's only one energy. That's potential energy, variegated in different ways, known by its effects. You can take a body of water and you can make it look different in different places by running it through different environments, giving it twists and turns here and there. But still, the essence of water is water. The essence always remains the same. So we always see the differences. Now, don't worry about it because this is how we're designed. Without this design, we have no way of operating in our environment. Without thinking that we are separate from everything, there's no way we can control something that we view as one with us. But that's a trick. And when we get outside the trick, we call this spiritual development or growth. And how do we do it? We do it progressively. So we take a starting point where we assume that the author is separate and different from us. And this, of course, is a step classically known in philosophy as dualism. We are here in a kind of bubble, and we have to deal with other people, places, and events on another side of things. And that's one strategy where we try to balance desire and fear, pleasure and pain. We can call this opposites, because nature runs on the principle of opposites. For every electron, there's a positron. We don't see the positron. For every matter, there's antimatter. We know it from the laboratory. We can produce it. But we don't really experience it in this world because we are here. We're not annihilated. We have male and female. We have plus and minus. We have positive charge, negative charge. We have attraction. We have repulsion. We have good. We have evil. We have light. We have shade. We have night. We have day. These are pairs of opposites. And psychologically, emotionally, we have praise and blame. And so that's how this universe that we call nature runs. Nature meaning the whole range of existence that we register externally. Now, the difficulty is this, that if we want a permanent resolution to the problems presented by this duality, we won't find it in the outside world. That means the principle that we put outside has to be invited inside. And so in the beginning, we say God is out there, the principle is out there, and now that principle is inside everything. And we have to practice that for 1,000 years if necessary, until we get it, until the feeling catches up with it. And what we find is something called divine grace is flowing. So every time we try to make a connection, just like every time we make a connection with the electrical current, by putting a switch, we are connected with the vast thing called electricity. Much, much bigger than the channeled version of it, where we use a light bulb or something like that. And so we have a way of taking this electrical current generated in vast quantities, maybe through hydroelectricity and various other things, nuclear energy and so on. And it is now channeled and reduced until it comes to your socket on the wall. But when you put your device into that socket and make a connection and put the switch on button, you make a connectivity with something much vaster than this. This is called divine grace. When you make that connectivity, the divine grace flows toward you and makes a transformation in you and everything else. This is called spiritual practice. And how we do it is through yoga. And there are 4 approaches toward it. And for most people, to rally the emotions around, we have to develop this quality of love. We love that entity that is a life giver because it is lovable, because everything is free of charge. The electrical current is not free of charge. That's the problem. You'd be hard-pressed to find anything free. Well, breathing is free. The air supplied is free, not taxed as yet. The capacity to digest your food is free. The capacity to renew cells is free. The heart pumps for free. It doesn't demand a salary. It doesn't go on strike. It doesn't make an occupation like that. It runs and runs and runs. And all the resources are supplied for free. And because they're free, we take these things for granted. As soon as we take things for granted, we break the connectivity. As soon as we appreciate them, we connect. And the connection is connection back to the original source. And the most direct connection will be in meditation. Meditation practice. That is continuously tuning in our attention to the glory of the divine, constantly doing it. No holiday for it is called practice. And what that does then is it reforms our previous sense of identity, our sense of dividedness. And therefore, this big obstacle of egoism starts disappearing. Now, for most people, therefore, to take on this idea of a personal identity, a personal God, is important, but it doesn't end there, because that personal concept of what can never be conceived has an infinite aspect to it. Now, there's a very useful analogy that the mystic Ramakrishna gives. So he uses the analogy of water, because water is, to all intents and purposes, formless. It takes on the form of whatever you put it into. But you see, if you change temperature and pressure, what will you have? On the one side, you'll have a vapor. In other words, all the molecules get distributed widely through heat. And that becomes a gas. Or you can lower the temperature down, and then it becomes ice. But ice, vapor, and water are all the same thing. They're just different forms. So that's an example of something that can be formless and have form. Now, supposing there's a divine intelligence that offers us, as an embodiment of love, offers itself as itself in a form that you love the most, analogous to ice, an ice sculpture. And we take that and we appreciate it, not knowing the ice or the iceberg is the water, but our love for this form dissolves the ice back into the formless. That's an added thing. So that the question that this Ramakrishna asks new devotees, do you believe in God with form or without form? And it's astonishing, because it never occurred to people that it can be both. And so what we call the world is that. And we were discussing earlier, you have three options about how things have developed and how things appear to us as the world. You can have nothing making everything out of nothing. It's a current view belonging to science. Don't tell a child that, they'll laugh at you. You just say, well, it's an adult thing. It's a foolish adult thing, never mind. Or you can have something making everything from nothing. Well, that's an ex nihilo approach. It's a theological approach that says there's an uncaused cause called a creator that makes everything from an unknown source. I hear the expression, this person made this from scratch. Then my next question, well, where did you get the scratch from? So a secondhand material has to be, then you have an ad infinitum trail. It's not that it's wrong, because we're grappling conceptually with something. The Upanishads say the mind comes back together with the senses. So we can't conceive of such a thing. We have to put a placeholder concept, and this divine grace gives us a suitable understanding of it. Whatever label we give it, every name, every word will have to have a corresponding form somewhere. You can't avoid it. And you cannot block it. If I say, please don't think of an elephant, that's the first thing that you'll think of. It'll come into your mind. It's a picture. That's what it is. Now, all of these are resources that we can use. So we use this advantage in a transformational way, just as a flower or a seed uses compost. We can't expect the flower to continue and say, compost will be compost. No, there's a transformation an inherent understanding, knowledge of how a flower can do it. And the knowledge doesn't end there. The leaves have this capacity to absorb the cosmic rays, absorb the rays of the sun, absorb photons, that means sunshine, and convert it into carbohydrates. And we munch and crunch on these carbohydrates, and we give off the carbon dioxide, as you know, and sometimes too much, and creates a climate difficulty and so on, according to some, and all the rest of it. But we took in the oxygen. This arrangement is there and requires appreciation, at least the fact that I'm alive and have the capacity to ask these questions, work it out rationally, and then rally the emotions around through practice so that we feel the reality of what we're studying. That's the important part. And the way to rally the emotions most is to rally the emotions which are all positive and have no egoistic aspect of it. Spirit of generosity and service on the basis of love, love for all. God is love, most religions define it in this way. We love that being because that being is lovable, and yet we're approaching it from our individuality. It won't last long, because as we tune in more and discover more, it becomes more unified, more expansive, more true, more subtle, until we get an aha moment and say, that's it. Because whatever we explore in this being, when we explore it fully, then we find it is vast, it is infinite, it's undivided, it's unchanging, it's pure being. And the moment we catch it in our experience, be it just for a second or a year through practice, the moment we catch it, the moment we know, that's it, that's this pure existence. I am one with that. So you've taken it from the outside, you've put it onto the inside, and then you've understood the connection. You've understood that this is flowing everywhere, just as electrical energy is flowing everywhere, wherever we have. Wherever we tune it in, we'll find it. We don't have to go to the electrical station for it. Same thing with broadcasting waves. We don't have to go to the broadcasting station every time you want to broadcast. Simultaneous broadcast is there at your transistor. And it's there where you're sitting. It's in an invisible atmosphere called the electromagnetic field, and we don't have to import it. It's already there. Whatever is there is already full and free and perfect, already here. As soon as we tune into that present, already here, we've made this connectivity. When we practice that, called Abhyasa Yoga, then we do it constantly, constant remembrance in your own way. You can do that step by step. Every student has its own different capacity. Now, there's a very interesting passage in the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So it's going like this. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasat jnanat dhyanam vishishyate jnanat karma para jagas jagach chandir anantaram. Knowledge is important. And what you're describing in the question is knowledge. Gained from what? Gained from things that you read, keeping things well encompassed in the head. But what is better than knowledge? Better than knowledge is understanding. Better than blind practice is actually knowledge. Blind practice, you do something, you light a candle, you do this, you do that, you offer some coconut, whatever your ritual is. But knowledge is much better than doing it, knowing what does it mean. But is there something better than that? Yes, better than knowledge is meditation. Meditation gives you the understanding of it, the inner meaning of it. It enriches it. It then gives you the experience. And better than meditation is something else. What? Renunciation. Renunciation of the fruit of all your activities, including the fruit of meditation. You detach from it. And then what follows renunciation? The stanza says, immediately peace follows. And peace is an experience. It's not a theory. We all want world peace. I was on Peace Day contributing to a conference, and the assumption is we all want peace. Nobody wants peace. It's just an ideal. It's just words. If you really wanted it, you'd make some changes. What most people mean by peace is, you leave me alone to be peaceful and enjoy myself and enjoy my life. It's not a contributory thing. It's not an ideal that we feel we can practice. If it was so, we would have no domestic disputes. We would have no stress, and we would have no wars, people killing each other. So we have to take the ideal and see how can we introduce it as a practice. And this is laid out 4 yogas are there, and we have to practice all of them in conjunction in this day and age. Bhakti yoga has to be there, jnana yoga has to be there, karma yoga has to be there, and dhyana yoga, meditation also has to be there. And integrated life practicing all of these is normally suitable for most people. You work out for yourself according to your personality which one should dominate. We go into this in great detail. That's why we do the personality development course called Enneagram and Essence of Truth, which says, okay, we have this obstacle called egoism. How can we understand it? How can we therefore also make it an open channel for divine grace to flow for others, so that there's an inner transformation in ourselves and a corresponding transformation in the so-called outside world. So-called because really, when you really understand, there's no outside, there's no inside, there's only fullness, as the stanza declares. Fullness is everywhere, perfection is everywhere. We just didn't notice it. So gradually, step by step, we have to do this and make a practice, understanding that there's a practice for everybody depending on your individuality. The important thing is, if God is there, we have to feel God. If divine grace is there, we have to feel the flow and direct it. Now, thought itself is part of this grace. When you meditate, it's not to get the flow of grace. That's a mistake. It's to experience the flow already happening. When you do exercise, is it to get something? If you do that, you'll be a little anxious. You'll be on the scales every day. Did I lose this much weight? Will get a compliment. Oh, you put a lot of weight on. Oh, more exercise required. You go on a fast or something like that, because you're looking for the fruits of something. So what is higher than meditation is giving up the stress element of activity. And that is, you give up the fruits or the effects of all activities. They don't belong to you. And that means I'm giving up all the individuality there. So learn how to meditate properly, but learn how to meditate with eyes open as well as eyes closed. You see, when Patanjali, the expert on meditation, brings out these are 8 easy steps. You find out, well, a ladder has 8 easy steps, but you cannot do step 7 until you've done step 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So step 1 is conduct your life in such a way that there is a full element of control in a 5-fold disciplinary way. First of all, don't have any harmful thought, word, or deed to any being, not just humans, any being. How do you manage that? You take the negativity away and understand The positive side of it is love every being. Now that's difficult when somebody insults you or somebody, works against you or whatever it is, human life, or there is misery in the world of some form or other. Maybe it's a natural disaster or something like that. It's difficult to keep your equilibrium. So we have to develop, cultivate an insight that says there is a loving, nurturing, flowing entity that is there for our good, but also runs on the principle of causation. And how we handle thought is one reason for our difficulties, because what you think comes to pass. Thought is an ordering mechanism that delivers something from the cosmic Amazon. And then you don't say, I never ordered this. No, you ordered it. You can't return it. Non-return policy. The universe has a non-return policy. So make sure that you order the right thing. And the right thing has no selfish component in it. So let everybody get it. Everybody includes you. So managing thought in a loving way, in a way that is expressive of noble values of truth and goodness and beauty. But love is the highest. Of all the values, love is the highest. But there must be a basis for it. You'll find that in the principles. So the principle of love is there's a unity of existence. Hate and you'll be hated, love and you'll be loved, because there's only one thing going on. There's only one energy. There's only one potential mass, only one matter. And we have this division, mind and matter, but actually it's the same thing. Otherwise you'll make a mistake. I don't mind, you don't matter. So mind and matter, it's an illusion. Now we know this from modern science, but our feeling and understanding has to catch up with it. What is meant by it? Is it just in the realm of some kind of physics area? Or do we understand that there's a unity? And we are simply a small vortex in a colossal universal flow called energy. And all that energy is divine. So 3 options are there. I mentioned only 2 of them. That is, ex nihilo, both counts. Nothing made everything from nothing. Something made everything from nothing. That we wouldn't pass our currency. We'll outgrow that concept. That's a creator concept. We don't have that concept in Vedanta, only as a convenience term. We have something made everything from itself. What we call the universe is nothing more than fragmented, seemingly fragmented one thing, Brahman, the supreme principle, what religion calls God. We get used to it. Have eyes that see it, have ears that hear it. Because the waves that make the things that you see, all the forms that you see, and the waves that make all the sounds that you hear, and the waves that make all the organic life that you experience, are the same waves that make the skin, the same waves that make the ear, the same waves that make the eye. Just 2 corresponding things, one to catch the other, and that's all there is to it. You must have noticed that when you don't eat food, you will feel weak, and the body will feel weak. If you withdraw the water, that's fatal. If you draw food, we can manage without it. But you must have noticed, now in the Chandogya Upanishad, that experiment is given. Please fast, don't eat any food. I'll give you some exercise. Let's put it in a modern context. I'll get you to do the Rubik Cube. Now after fasting for, let's say, 3 days, please do it. You'll be much slower. You'll be forgetful. What did we learn? So on, confused. Because physically we require food. What is the human body and the human brain is nothing more than converted food. And it's a miracle how we put white pastry in one end and it comes out as, well, you can understand white beard, so we use a different color, but how it comes out as skin, see, and nails and teeth and corpuscles and red bloodstream and so on and so forth. So that conversion mechanism, we know the chemistry of it, but it's an amazing, amazing process. It's more than just a factory process. It requires a complexity. That complexity means that that loving entity is inside the food, inside the design mechanism that reduces it and converts it into energy, one energy, and so it all continues. And science picks it up in a law of conservation, that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. And matter also cannot be created, not be destroyed. There's a continuous cyclical thing going on. And we have to notice it, and we have to have an elevation of spirit when we notice it that says, how wonderful, full of feelings of adoration and wonderful wonder and thankfulness. Cultivate that. That's called practice. Now, in the Oriental tradition, we require scripture that gives us the principles and the practices. We require direction from a competent teacher called Guru, and we require divine grace. We require the mind. We require the grace of the mind. The mind is the only thing that's the problem. And when we sit down and the mind goes in all different directions, well, join the human race. That's how it is, because there are so many inputs. Now, the Katha Upanishad tells us we won't get it by looking outside. That consciousness that is our birthright, that is flowing through the windows, if you like, the external connection with the external world. With a little wisdom, we have to invert it. Once we invert it, we get away from the problem area, which is the objects. And we then find this moment of poise within us, and then that creates an opening for us. The rest creates a shrinking. Increased ignorance creates shrinkage. Increased knowledge or understanding creates an opening. That's why flowers are so beautiful. So create that opening with you and nurture it with prayer, with loving recitation of a divine name, with holy company, and from time to time go into solitude. This is the recommendation of the mystic Ramakrishna. Use that formula, have a steady practice every day, and relentlessly pursue it. And you require purity, you require patience, you require persistence. Well, I think we leave it there with that question. Yeah. So I hope I made some inroads into answering your question. So, any other question other than what's the population of Nigeria? That much I don't know, because it keeps changing.
Good morning, Swami.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for your answer about Swami Purnananda. I've, this book, but my question was not good because it didn't say exactly say for some Catholic, if you take off the cross, nothing remains. So
Yes.
it's not exactly what I wrote, my question.
Yes.
But
yes.
your answer was very good, and I thank you for your answer.
Mm-hmm.
Deeply thank you.
You see, if we simply understand that this world is to do with our survival, our struggle, and living so that we don't diminish and try and have an individual purpose and meaning and so on, it inevitably involves self-interest. And self-interest is the opposite of the full capacity for generosity and love. And yet we have examples of that. And see, no greater love does a man have, man meaning mankind, than to give up his life or her life for others. Because what we interpret as a person's life is a person's individuality, comprising just yesterday's potatoes, and that's it. And our identification with it. If you have too many potatoes, you start looking like potatoes, and that's not good either. So, are you prepared to give up your life for another is a supreme test of whether you are now practicing the principles. Because all of this spirituality requires renunciation. So if the cross symbolizes a sense of egoism, a sense of identity, you see, you can say it's like this and gets crossed out. I and crossed out. You can take it in that way. It doesn't end the story because Christianity doesn't end there, for example. Christianity starts with a resurrection, a glory. That when we give up this small I, we pave the way for a glorious opening of our own nature. That's the wonderful, wonderful example, if you will, of the Christian cross. See, we can take any religion and get the same fundamental principles in everybody, in every religion. Truth is truth, whatever your cultural aspect, whatever your religion, whatever your non-religion, whatever your position, you just require being a human, because human has the capacity to analyze these questions, investigate these questions, arouse curiosity, including doubt, and establish something that is reasonable and also something that advances our growth to the point where we realize no growth was necessary because our discovery was already there. It just requires an uncovering. Somebody today gave the analogy, is it a game of hide and seek, what we call life? It's exactly that. And every child knows the glory and the joy of hide and seek. So the truth is hidden from us. We are looking for it. And then when it's finally revealed, then this is the spiritual revelation that we have. All the energy that we have has to be diverted. Mental energy that we have has to be diverted in a more useful, more productive, more real, more glorious way. And that gives us mental joy. It also transforms the world. Cultivate that. Play the game of life. Play it well. Play it joyfully. All right.
Yes, I have another question. It's about this book. Um, the book. This book, Girish Chandra Ghosh.
Yes, yes. Oh,
And
yes.
it's a very difficult book.
Yes, yes.
And there is a question about God with form and without form.
Yes.
It's not so easy, because I read in this book a story very difficult to understand. It's about Ramakrishna visiting the zoo, and he saw the lion and came back home. And he was criticized by Rabindranath Tagore.
Yeah.
And this story...
Devannath, I think. Devannath Tagore, yeah.
Rabindranath, it's written in the book.
Devendranath Tagore, yeah. It's actually Rabindranath's father, yeah. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. And even in India, they don't believe in God with form. I believe in God without form. For me, God is without form. And but this story, it's difficult for me to understand because Ramakrishna saw the lion, he came back home, and they say he was criticized. He's not a real Paramamsa.
Yes, because our view of a Paramahansa is somebody who sits in a cave somewhere in a loincloth and is supposed to suppress the world in the interests of discovering the formless. But that's not Ramakrishna's idea. Ramakrishna's idea is this world itself is the divine form and expresses us, the full divine grace expresses itself to the individual devotee in the form that devotee finds most easy, most convenient, loves the most. It's a psychological adaptation. So this was Ramakrishna's unique thing. Gave a shot to M. Mahendranath Gupta the first time. You see that the conversation was there in the Gospel of Ramakrishna. Do you believe in God with form or without form? I was surprised, he says. I'm paraphrasing. I'm surprised. I thought, how can there be both? And so a great, great mystic who goes to the zoo, who goes to the equivalent of the cinema, no cinema in those days, who goes to theater performances, who enjoys an outing and who enjoys food. What kind of Paramahansa is this? He should be starving himself to death. But you see, neither Buddha did that, nor Jesus did that. As far as I know, they ate. As far as I know, they walked. As far as I know, they enjoyed the countryside, and in Jesus' case, the Sea of Galilee, and the sunrise and the sunset, and the mountains and the hills and the deserts and so on. And the gardens, the Garden of Gethsemane. And block it off and say we have to destroy this world in front of us, and then only then will we get this reality. Not at all. Part of Maya is the revealing factor of it, the revealing aspect of it. The Maya itself reveals it. Ramakrishna tells us the story. How do you get a thorn out of your foot? You take another thorn and take it out. You use nature to overcome nature, because nature has all the formulas for our freedom. And we take it in feminine form like a mother nature, not against us, for us, at each step of the way. And we are part of it, by the way. All right, well, we leave it there then. Om Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Swami.
Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Good, thanks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you. Thank you, Swami. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om